Back in 1995 was when my grandmother passed away, and I had a major breakdown, meltdown, and so failing my suicide attempt, my employer at the time quickly sent me to EPA, employment assistance, and I was diagnosed with major clinical depression. I said, you would be depressed too if all this was happening to you. I am not mentally defective. I'm not crazy. I rejected it. I was in total denial of it. That wasn't me. I understood my feelings, but you don't understand my condition. So that's how I felt toward the professional. That's how I felt toward the actual label and diagnosis. It was just way, way inefficient and insufficient to describe, you know, where I'm at. I'll describe my life growing up was a feeling of alienation, alienness. I was adopted into this world. I was adopted by adoptive parents. I came over from a foreign country, China, speaking Cantonese. The place where I landed was in a neighborhood of colors. Namely, my neighbors to the right and to the left were Mexicans speaking Spanish, therefore my nickname, Lorenzo. And my first language in this country was Spanish. My third language then is English, and I struggled with that language. So growing up was very confusing. It was foreign, alien, and I would say hostile, because I came into a family of 5 siblings. It was a ready-made family. The parents, the adoptive parents, were guardians to 5 foster children, and I came in as, you know, their hope for raising a little child. But I never felt that I fit. I always felt out of place. So, given that background, I found challenges and issues when I first started school with not understanding the teacher saying my name, which legally is Larry. I always heard my name as Yuwa or Lorenzo. And if anybody tried to pronounce my name in English from our family, it was Lale. So I didn't even recognize my name being called. And I was punished with a note pinned on me. And because my mom knew that something was bad from the note, she spanked me without even understanding the note. So that tells you also that I kind of grew up in a history of physical abuse. And later on, my adoptive grandmother, I'm not related to anybody in my family other than my biological son, but my grandmother, who came over after me, was the one who actually picked me out of the orphanage, and I bonded with her from 3 months to 3 years old. It took literally that long for the adoption and the immigration process. When she passed away, I was lost. I felt like a zombie, like a part of me had died, like I was out of body, like my spirit and my soul was someplace else and my body was just walking around on the earth. I so wanted to be with her. She and I were so close. We were the best allies and friends. You know, she just blessed my life over and over in many different ways, and she loved me unconditionally. And when she left, I felt I was no longer loved by anyone on this planet because nobody loved me like she loved me. I became suicidally depressed. I mean, to the point where I attempted to take my own life. I failed my suicide attempt. They 5150'd me. They had to call my parents to drive up to San Francisco General to they wouldn't release me. They 5250'd me. They had to have an extension. They wouldn't let me out unless it were in somebody that they could trust, in their hands or their custody would be my parents. I'm back home, a 40-year-old middle-aged man, made his success and living with his parents. That became even more depressing. So I roamed the streets looking for some comfort, and I found crack cocaine. And that was the answer, because when I took that hit, I didn't have to care. It didn't matter. It made me, it exonerated me emotionally from caring. I'll tell you though, living on the streets and ending up homeless and broke, I learned to become a survivor. I learned from the best of them. I had learned from the best of them. I learned from the best of the underworld, the illegitimate world, and I had learned from the best of the corporate, legitimate world. It almost became a safer, more comfortable environment because I didn't have to prove myself as much. All I had to do was survive. When I was back into the mainstream life, I had to go get a job again. I had to fill out applications. I had to tell them whether I had drug convictions. I had to prove myself. I had to wait, I had to reprove myself. I had already done that in a previous career. So it was just too much effort. And being Chinese, I felt ashamed to be taking these. For example, my first job out of my first program, drug rehab program, was working at the cash register for Barnes and Nobles. I was making minimum wage. For a lot of other people that were in program for drug rehab, that was great. They were getting a legitimate job for the first time in their life. And I didn't downplay that. I respected that. But for me, it's like too many steps. So it was easy that I went in and out. When I finally moved from Fresno back to the Bay Area, Berkeley, in 2008, I had just enough money. By then, I had been diagnosed. By then, I was receiving an SSI check, and I could make it from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. But I could barely subsist, right? Back then, the laws were such that you couldn't even find a place to rent cheap enough. So I went homeless still, but I was able to at least eat and maybe have a few, better shelter. I was able to buy a tent and have a sleeping bag, but there was really no place to sleep, legally. So I was still disenfranchised, so to speak. It was during those moments of each one helping one another that I first experienced peer support in terms of what we see as peer support these days in mental health. And come to find out, many of them also have had diagnoses. Come to find out, many of those people have also had traumatic events. Going to NA and AA meetings, come to find out many of us have shared common traumas that were diagnosed, that we share life issues and problems. But I don't see this as, no longer see this as being mentally defective or mentally ill. Life is a treasure, precious. And I find that best illustrated in my son. To think back now that I was going to end my life and leave him not knowing with so many questions and anguish. I am truly ashamed, but I've gotten over that. But to have so much help along the way has encouraged me and has heartened me. That help is everywhere. All we need to do is be receptive, because the help comes when we need it. I'm not ashamed of my diagnosis. In fact, I respect my diagnosis because it's a useful tool, a handle. I understand now the medical model is striving simply to get a grip on, to get an understanding of how to treat these conditions, which people, for whatever reason, is disturbing them inside to the point where their outward behavior becomes a danger to themselves or others. So at least even though it's a label, and to many, it's still considered a stigma. So I do intend to speak out, to illuminate, to help with my research and or advocacy in shedding light so that lay people can understand what those labels mean and what it means in specific to them in terms of security, safety, whether they have loved ones or neighbors that they're feeling threatened by or care for. So that'll be my lifelong endeavor.